you. It's tremendous to be here. Oh my gosh, 2 days till voting. And you all are among the most powerful and influential people in our country today. I know it doesn't feel like it, living your lives, doing your thing. Come check out the presidential candidates that come through at the local Mexican place. But Boone, I have done the math. Do you know how many Californian voters each of you is worth? 1,000 each. That's right. So look around this room today. How many people are here with us? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 800 people in this room. It's the biggest Mexican restaurant anyone's ever seen. They're legitimately, I shouldn't even say a number because there's probably a fire code in this place. They're legitimately, let's call it 100 people plus here, which would be several football stadiums worth of Californians. That's the power we have assembled right here today to do something that the rest of our country only dreams about, which is to push our country in a new direction. Now, I'm not running as a professional politician. I'm running for president as an entrepreneur and problem solver who's been trying to get us to understand a challenge or problem that we've been wrestling with for the last several years as a country. And that challenge or problem is this. Why is Donald Trump our president today? Why really, right? Closer to home, how did Donald Trump win Iowa, a purple swing state, by almost 10 points? If you turned on cable news at any point in the last several years, we've been offered a whole series of explanations as to why he won. I know you've seen them too, so go ahead and shout out one of the explanations that you've seen floating around the last several years. Racism. Russia. Fear. Emails. Hillary Rodham Clinton. Nationalism. Revenge. Facebook, media, sexism, FBI, the Russians again, the DNC again, Fox News and the media.
The 400-pound guy on the bed.
I think I might have missed out. I was like, is she talking about Chris Christie? That was just what. Yeah. So we've all been presented these explanations sort of mixed together into some kind of stew. But Boone, I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell a very clear and compelling story as to why Trump is our president today. We eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years in this country. And where were those jobs primarily located? Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. Manufacturing jobs gone. I have been to those towns that lost those jobs, and when the plant closed, then the shopping district closed. Then people left. Then the school shrank, and that town has never recovered. I saw the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because I spent the last 7 years running a nonprofit that helped create thousands of jobs in those states. And unfortunately, what we did to those manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of our economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in this part of Iowa? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right. 10 years ago, you might have said Walmart. Walmart was like a tank that came to town and started running over mom and pop retailers. Amazon's more like a spaceship, hovering over everything, sucking up $20 billion in business a year, closing 30% of your stores and malls. I was just in a mall the other day where the JCPenney just closed. And we all know these malls can go from cheery to spooky awfully quick. But here's the thing we might not realize. The most common job in the economy is retail clerk. The average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $12 an hour. When her store closes, what is her next job going to be? We're not quite sure. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? That is your math, Boone. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores close, most common job starts to disappear, and you get zero back. These are changes we can see and feel around us, but they're more pervasive than most of us know. When you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software on the other end, you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, human, representative, human, 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 until you get someone on the line. Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we all do that because that software is terrible. We're all like, a person still works at this company somewhere, and I'm going to find that person right now. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software will sound like this. Hello, Andrew, how are you? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, efficient. What will that mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour? How many of you know a truck driver here in Iowa? Most common job in 29 states. 3.5 million truckers. Average age 49, 94% men. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They tell me they're 98% of the way there. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania a month ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you can find the story. And at the end of the route was a giant stack of pancakes, as far as the eye can. I made up the pancakes. But everything else is real, Boone. The robot trucks are coming. What will they mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers in our communities, or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truck stopping every day and the truckers getting out and having a meal? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Yeah, it's got a mean buffet. Maybe not as mean as this one. I haven't tried this one yet. It's good here. How many, well, they say that 5,000 people stop at Iowa 80 every day right now. How many people will stop there if the trucks don't have drivers anymore? 2, that was very authoritative. She's like me and this other person. Boone, we're going through the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country. What experts are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. Chances are, you've never heard a politician even say the words 4th Industrial Revolution until just now. And I am barely a politician. I am an entrepreneur who started an organization that helped create thousands of jobs in the Midwest and South. I was honored several times by the Obama administration, so I got to bring my wife, Evelyn, to meet the president. My in-laws were very excited about me for about a week. But during this time, while I was getting awards and accolades, I had this sinking feeling that my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom, that the water level was getting worse, not better. And then Trump wins. I see the direct line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting area and the movement to Trump in that area. I see that these trends are only going to accelerate and pick up steam because the technology is getting smarter, more capable, faster in ways that we are not. As human beings, we feel fortunate to stay just about the same. Like if I didn't get dumber in a day, that's a good day. Not our kids. I mean, our kids are getting smarter, but you know what I mean. Like after you get to to like full-on adulthood, you're like, if I could find my keys, that was pretty good. But that's not the tech. The tech is ramping up in unprecedented ways. I know the people who are developing the technology, and they are concerned. I'm concerned. We have to start addressing the real challenges that have been ripping holes in our economy, that have been causing people to feel pushed to the side. That was my mission when I went to Washington, D.C. in 2017. So Trump wins in 2016. I go to D.C. in 2017, and I say to them, look, we're going through this historic economic transformation. Immigrants are being scapegoated for problems they have next to nothing to do with. When you go to a factory in Michigan, you do not find wall-to-wall immigrants doing work. What do you find? Wall-to-wall robot arms and machines doing the work that people used to do. So I asked the folks in D.C., what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do? He said, go away. We have no idea. No, these guys have DC hats on. It's impressive. He said we should study this further, and he said we should form a committee. Those were some of the most common answers I got. But the most common answer I got was something you've all heard before, and it was this. We must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. Raise your hand if you've heard that one in some form. Oh, we all have. But I'm the numbers guy, Boone. I looked at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? Not. You know it's low because I'm anchoring you low. But you also know it's low because you have common sense and you know people. You know if you have hundreds of manufacturing workers who lose their jobs, they don't all march outside and say, I'm here for my coding retraining program. I'll be coding in no time. I mean, that's not human nature. The success rates were between 0 and 15%. Almost half of the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest left the workforce and did not work again. Of that group, almost half filed for disability. We then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in these communities to the point where America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? World War II is a great guess. World War I's a great guess. Great Depression's also a great guess. It's a little bit before the Depression. It's the Spanish flu of 1918. A global pandemic that killed millions 100 years ago. You have to go back 100 years because it's highly unusual for life expectancy to go down in a developed country. Ordinarily it just goes up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But here in the US, it went down and then down and then down again. When I said this to the folks in DC, one person said something that brought me here to you all in Boone today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this because fundamentally, this is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we would do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. And Boone, I don't know if you can feel it, but the wave is you. The wave is this Monday. The wave is our chance to rewrite the rules of this economy to start working for us and our people and not just these big companies that have been running our government for far too long. I stand before you today, fourth in the polls and rising to be the Democratic nominee. We raised $16.5 million last quarter in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there was no corporate PAC money in there, Boone. This is all just ordinary Americans trying to take back our government to work for us. Because right now we have corporate profits going up and life expectancy trending down. Which do you listen to? If you're us, you listen to life expectancy because it's literally our lives. But if it's DC, they can't see that. They just follow the money. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. Think about that for a second. What do they produce? None of us knows. And yet business is awfully good. Donald Trump wanted to drain the swamp. Boone, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to distribute the swamp. Why would you employ hundreds of thousands of government workers in the most expensive city in your country? Why wouldn't you move some of those jobs to Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa? You would save billions of dollars right off the bat, and I would argue that these agencies would make better decisions because they were living someplace normal among normal Americans and not in a DC bubble just talking to each other. I'm for term limits for members of Congress. How did I know you're going to applaud to that?
Chuck Grassley's what you knew.
Oh, that's nice. Their goal should be to go to D.C. on your behalf, do work, and then come home. It should not be to go there and say, let me stay, let me stay. I love it here, I love it here. So Boone, this is how we're going to get it done. I'm going to be your president a year from now. Thank you for that. And then I'm going to go to Congress and say, hey, we should have 12-year term limits, both houses. Becomes much more dynamic and responsive. So let's pass this, but current lawmakers are exempt. Do you think they'll pass that? Oh yeah, they'll pass that the next day. They'll say, we do this for the American people. Because it doesn't affect them. Just affects whoever comes after them. They'll walk around being like, oh, look at this. Like, I can still stay forever. But then eventually they'll lose, they'll get phased out, and you'll have a legislature that actually is much more dynamic and responsive. The biggest problem is that corporate interests and lobbyist cash have taken over the government. So how do you break that stranglehold? You need to overturn Citizens United, but the fact is corporate money ran that town before Citizens United. So what's the real fix? Only 5% of Americans donate to political candidates or campaigns right now. So if you're in that 5%, pat yourself on the back, because that's a very high level of engagement. So how do you get that percentage up and wash out the lobbyist cash? My plan is to give every American voter 100 democracy dollars that you can give to any candidate or campaign that you want every year. Use it or lose it. What percentage of Americans do you think would donate to a candidate or a campaign if they literally had 100 free dollars they could use to do that? Well, he said everybody, but we all know you can't get 100% of Americans or anything. It's like Americans are 82. That was very authoritative. Let's call it 60%. At 60%, we'd wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 5 to 1. Because think about it, if you get 10,000 Americans to give you their 100 democracy dollars, that's $1 million. And then if the lobbyist comes to you and says, hey, I've got $70,000 for you, you're like, I do not want your money because they're going to see that and they're not going to like it. And so I should just go with the people, because this way the people and the money are in the same place. Instead, right now, the people are over here and the money's over here. And right now in America, if the money's over here and the people are over here, who wins? The money. That's what we have to change, Boone. We have to make it so that our government's actually responding to us and not the big companies. Really, at this point in America, if your first name is Big and your last name is Company, then our government has like a concierge service for you. But if your name is anything else, they can barely hear you. This is our chance to change it. More important than getting our government under control, and you're like, what could be more important than that? Because that stuff's pretty core, but I think you'll agree. More important than that is making this economy actually start working for you and your families. Because right now, you're getting sucked dry. We talked about this Amazon shutting 30% of your stores and malls. It just goes on and on from there. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Yeah, me too. If you're a parent, you've had this sinking feeling sometime in the not-so-distant past that our kids are inheriting a future that is less bright, less secure, and less prosperous than the lives that we have led. Why do we feel this way? Because it's true. If you were born in the 1940s in the United States of America, there was a 93% chance you were going to do better than your parents did. That's the American dream. That's what brought my family here. That's what we aspire to for our kids. But if you were born in the 1990s in this country, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and it's declining fast. That's why the parents feel the way that we do. That's why our young people feel like they have the deck stacked against them in ways that the previous generations did not. It's all true, Boone. It's all in the numbers. So how do we fix it? If you're here today, you know my flagship proposal is to give every American $1,000 a month starting at age 18 till the day you die. Raise your hand if you knew that. Keep your hand up if you think that's too good to be true. In one event, literally no one moved. Like the entire hand, I was like, wow. I understand it. I get it. But Boone, this is not my idea and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country, called it the citizens' dividend, all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated just last week, was fighting for this when he was killed in 1968, the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. I had the privilege of sitting with Dr. King's son in Atlanta, where he told me this is what his father was fighting for. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the forefathers of modern economic thought, endorsed this plan in the 60s. It was so mainstream it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon, the Family Assistance Plan. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? And how does Alaska pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out recently that said that our data, your data, is now worth more than oil. Raise your hand if you saw that study. Keep your hand up if you got your data check in the mail last month. If your data is now worth billions of dollars a year and you are not seeing a dime of it, then where is all of that money going? Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, the trillion-dollar companies that are paying nothing or next to nothing back into our country. This is what you must change, Boone. We must reach out, get this value that is leaving your communities, that's getting essentially made off of you, and then put it back in your hands in the form of a dividend of $1,000 a month for everyone here. Particularly because after this money is in your hands, where will it go? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. Someone out here was like, never. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and more Mexican food, and Democratic Party dues, and religious organizations. Boone, this is the trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. This would give our kids a secure future. We could actually look them in the eye and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and your country will invest in you and your future. This should have been done decades ago. This is why the imbalances are so severe between us and our families and the big companies, and the rural communities and the big cities. Donald Trump is not the cause of all of our problems. And Democrats, to me, are making a mistake by acting like he is. Donald Trump is a symptom of a disease that has been building up for years and decades. And Boone, it is up to us to start curing this disease starting on Monday night. And I'm just the Asian doctor for the job. So in this context, this $1,000 a month dividend is not just necessary but vital, because it's going to rebalance the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of the world right before it gets even more historically extreme, which is about to happen. This is the kind of move we need to make to start actually making this economy work for us and our families. We're being told right now how great things are in our economy. I know you've seen it. Record high stock market prices, record high GDP, record low unemployment. And once again, you're feeling things do not seem so great in my community, in my life. And once again, you are right. Corporate profits are at record highs in the United States of America right now. What else are at record highs? Suicides, credit card debt and bankruptcy, school loans, medical bills, gun violence, stress, anxiety, depression, mental illness, substance abuse, drug overdoses, deficit, What are at record lows in the United States right now?
It's like Eeyore over there.
Record lows in the United States of America right now. Starting a business for a young person, getting married, having a child. All the things you associate with a thriving society are now at record lows in the United States right now. This is a disease that has been building up for years and years, and Iowa has been ground zero for many of these changes. It started on your farms with the mechanization and consolidation of thousands of farming jobs. Then it went to your factories, blasting away 40,000 manufacturing jobs and shuttering those towns. Now it's on your main streets, closing 30% of your stores and malls. Pretty soon it will be on your highways. You have to turn the tide, Boone. You have to rewire this economy so instead of working for the big companies, it starts working for you and yours. I know many of you feel it's your obligation to send a person of integrity and honor to the White House on behalf of the rest of the country. That is not the standard you should be using. The standard should be whether or not this person's going to try and improve your way of life and the way of your life of your family here in Boone every single day. Because if we can't do that, we should not be your president. I know on a personal level how off base our economic measurements are because of my own family. My wife Evelyn is at home every day with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work valued at in our economic measurements right now? She gets a 0. How about every stay-at-home parent in the country? How about caregivers like Kyle taking care of ailing loved ones? That's a 0. Volunteers and activists trying to do something positive in the community? Most coaches and mentors looking out for our kids? 95% of artists. One thing we don't talk about a lot, but it's crucial. How about local journalists? Almost 2,000 local newspapers have gone out of business in the United States because their advertising revenue went up to the cloud, and you can't run a paper on that. There are now 200 counties in our country that don't have a single local news source. What doesn't function very well if you do not have local news? Democracy. Because how can you vote on what's going on in your community if literally no one is covering what's going on in your community? Boone, these are the things we're supposed to value most deeply. Our kids, our family, our community, our democracy, and they're getting zeroed out one by one by one. They're getting zeroed out because we have been collectively convinced that economic value and human value are the same things. That's what we have to change. We have to say to the rest of the country that we each have intrinsic value as Americans, as citizens, and as shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world. We have to let our fellow Americans know it is not our purpose to work for the economy. It is the purpose of this economy to work for us and our families. You're thinking about applying to that? I'm like, yeah. It's fine. I am the numbers guy. I am not running for president of the United States because I dreamt about being president of the United States. Those were not the conversations in the Yang household. Growing up, my parents were not like, you're going to be president someday. They were more like, you're terrible, clean your room. I'm running for president because, like so many of you here today, I'm a parent. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, and it is not something I'm willing to accept. They deserve better. We must give them better. We must fight to give them better on Monday. It's been tremendous campaigning here in Iowa over the last 18, 19, 20 months. This is my 25th, 26th trip to the state. And you all have been really good to me, my family. My kids love it here. They made like a snowman and then stuck. They don't get to do that much. And then they stuck some like Yang like paraphernalia on him. We're joking that they created a voter. And when I first started coming here, it was, no one had ever heard of me. There were certainly no TV commercials. It's me and like maybe 1 or 2 staffers in a rental car, and we would just drive to wherever people would hear me out, really. But it's thanks to the people here in Iowa that we have a real chance to make change. And I love and appreciate you for it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the fact that you all control the future of our country, and I know that you're going to take us in the right direction on Monday. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very, very simple and powerful message for us. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America is already great. You remember that? It's been a long 3 years, Boone, I know. But it's now coming to an end. That answer did not go over well with many Americans because the problems in our communities are all too real. We have to acknowledge their depth and severity, but then we need solutions that will actually help move our communities forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. Boone, you know we have to do the opposite. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of this time, like climate change. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. You may not know this, Boone, but math is an acronym. What does it stand for? Make America think harder. That's right. That's your job on Monday. It's your job to move this country we love, not left, not right, but forward. And I know that's just where you will take us. Thank you, Boone. Let's fight for a future we'll actually be proud of for our kids and the next generation. Thank you. Thank you.